Let's go on prowling moodily through this modern art studio of nowadays, interpreting the signs. The big no, the first two letters of nowadays. No to genius, no to beauty, no to art where you can tell what's happening. Here's a modern artist who's made some paintings of words to go with her sculpture of a full stop. She's going to be showing both at the Tate Gallery. Modern art today is full of words and full of sounds. This slightly menacing horror music sound, like the soundtrack for a modern art programme, is actually some modern art, being made by this artist, who's also just had a show at the Tate. Hey look, it's a painting by me. I painted it at art school. It's cosmic op art. And now it's going to be me talking. I wonder what I'm going to say.
Why is it when we think of modern art, the art of today, that we don't think of this anymore? A genius artist in his studio drawing a nude woman with charcoal. What happened to make that idea of art an old hat idea? This is my studio in Derbyshire Street in Bethnal Green. I share it with a load of other artists who also never draw the model and who mostly have never seen a nude woman in an artist's studio outside of Hollywood films about Van Gogh or Michelangelo. At this moment, they're upstairs or along the corridor testing out every activity under the sun except life drawing to see if it could be art.
At another moment, behind a cloud of sexy Gauloise smoke in a studio along the great dark corridor of time, is a real genius with a big pen, the biggest pen of all, the pen of Pablo, drawing a face. War bad, Picasso said, peace good. That was the 1950s, the time when I was born, when Picasso was a communist. Because it was a time when modern art really stood for something, and a scribble and a line and a few dots by Picasso could seem to sum up everything, nobody laughed at his solution to world conflict. But they did sometimes cry about his drawing. Why, a child of 6 could do it, Royal Academicians cried. They hated Picasso and everything new. They wanted everything to be old again. But now, it's the 90s, and I'm in my 40s, and it's a whole different world. Today, modern art is a real pig sawn in half with a chainsaw and suspended in a vitrine of formaldehyde. Or it's a photo of a blankly staring, post-feminist woman of the 90s. Or a tent by another woman artist, embroidered with the names of everyone she's ever slept with. Or the London tube map, but with all the names of the stations changed to nonsense. Footballers instead of Jubilee line stops, philosophers instead of the Circle line. So that's modern art now, and what I'm going to be doing over the next 6 weeks in this modern art series called This Is Modern Art, in a kind of ironic, doubtful way, because no one knows what modern art really is travelling through time. Looking at the modern art of the past and back again to the modern art of today, to see what the past has to say about the present, and what the present has to say about the past. This is what the inside of my head looks like. It's like a museum of modern art of the mind. There's some abstract expressionism. Later I'm going to be looking at 3 giant turning points in the history of modern art, all coming out of this place, the real Museum of Modern Art in New York. Huge, white, magnificent. Anyone who's ever been there will know the sheer confidence of the display, the scale of it, the feeling of authority and credibility that it has. New Yorkers go around with that model of modern art in their heads. More or less, not the ones on crack, of course, because Americans want this kind of art. It answers a need. What is this need, exactly? Modern art is a mixture of snob culture and amazing open-mindedness, like Andy Warhol. Modern art is a system, but one that's always changing. Warhol stands for one of its big changes. Later on, we're going to be meeting him, plus 2 more geniuses who moved the parameters of modern art. This is the first one, the big cigar of modernity, Picasso. This is Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon is the picture at the beginning of all modern art books. It's the picture that started Cubism. It's hardly a picture at all. It's a monster picture, a parody of a picture, painted in one way and then half painted over in a different way, without caring if the seams show. 5 ugly, angry, glaring prostitutes in a brothel with their armpits showing, and their blank, indifferent, dead faces staring out, or their primitive, dog-like African mask faces. From the eyebrows out to the folds of the curtains, everything irritates everything else. Everything is spiky and jostling, as if it's the painting, not the women, glaring out like an ugly, angry, shocking, exciting art joke. When I first saw this picture in a book at about age 17, I didn't think this is Cubism. I thought this is modern art, the hard stuff. Sarah Lucas, defiant woman of the 90s, icon of young British art, up against the wall, defiantly redefining what it means to be modern. This abject, wretched, stocking monster called Bunny, which Lucas made in 1997, is the sister of Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, only 70 years younger than them.
Picasso is somebody I identify with, I mean, just in terms of the amount of sex in his work, I suppose. That's the subject, or the way they would transform, say, fruit, or even just lines that aren't break up a face in a certain way so that you can see a penis in it or something like that. And like where he turns a pair of handlebars into a pair of horns. I'd say come very close to the kind of transformation that I'm using with ordinary objects to stand for something else.
Dumb things transforming in the mind. This sculpture has a 1990s tone of jokey contempt. Nevertheless, it's a work that comes at the end of an art timeline that begins with Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It's art that would be impossible without Picasso. It laughs at the cult of the macho, but it respects the thing that the sex myth of Picasso really stands for, Picasso's cult of change, of perpetual renewal.
In my mind, he kind of stands for one of the artists who managed to carry on changing, and rather than just kind of reiterating their old work, and their freshest work being when they were younger. So that's one of the things I probably admire about him.
I find Picasso very moving, not disconnected from my world, but part of it. What does he stand for? He stands for ceaseless creativity, not caring, not being snobbish, having his own system, never being polite. On the other hand, he also stands for a kind of atrophying of the restless modern art mind, where, whenever his name is mentioned, tasteful music starts up, and we stop thinking.
The Picasso Museum in Paris is not an unfamiliar sight on television, and a presenter waddling about it, waving his arms around, is not unknown either. So how do you make this old art subject new? Well, for one thing, you can acknowledge that we live in a world where artists like Tracey Emin and Sarah Lucas are art stars, and where Cubism is no more important than any other ism, and no ism is all that important. And consequently, for different people with different interests, there are a lot of different Picassos. There's the genius, and he is that. No one could be here with the energy of this art and not feel he was a genius of some kind. But there's also the absurd, decadent, rich person who could buy a chateau for the price of a drawing, and the old, macho, outdated sex monster, obsessively fixated on the image of the artist alone in the studio with a naked female model. The woman rendered again and again as a kind of hilarious, exploded, uglified, beautifully painted male sex fantasy.